Is Councillor Ashok Patel, Chair of the Committee. Sitting next to me is Councillor Nikos Sosis. Before we begin, there are some housekeeping points to cover. This meeting is being live streamed on YouTube. By taking part, you are consenting to be recorded. Please can officers introduce themselves before speaking for the first time? And would everyone please use their microphones? There are tea, coffee, and biscuits available in the staff kitchen next to the reception, and the toilets are on the left-hand side. You need your H&F security badge to get into the kitchen and other office areas. If the fire alarm sounds for any reason, either continuously or intermittently, I will adjourn the meeting. Please leave the meeting in an orderly fashion by the staff fire exit, which is behind me to my right. Officers will then direct you to the assembly point in Riverside Gardens. Shall we now proceed with the agenda? Are there any apologies for absence? I've received an apology from David Hughes. Declarations of interest. Do members have any declarations of interest? Minutes of the previous meeting. Do the members approve the open minutes of the meetings held on the 12th of November 2024? Right. Minutes of the previous pension fund committee meetings. This item includes exempt minutes. Do members note the open and exempt minutes of the pension fund committee meetings held on the 26th of November 2024? Noted. Thank you. Item 5 of the agenda. Can I ask Eleanor Dennis to briefly introduce the item?
Good evening, Eleanor Dennis, Head of Pensions for Hammersmith and Fulham. Thank you, Chair. So the first paper sets out the key performance indicators for the pension administration side of things. It's provided by LPPA for Q3, the period September to December 24 inclusive. The report demonstrates continued improvement in the processing of cases overall, with an overall KPI of 98.1%. So all cases were processed above the 95% target, which is good to see, particularly in the areas, sensitive cases such as deaths and processing of retirements. I welcome any questions from the board. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Right. Do you have any? Yes.
Sorry, William. Can you hear me?
Yeah, great.
With the customer satisfaction score for the active retirements, I noticed that there was 48%, an increase in the number of people responding, but also a sort of disproportionate increase in the number of dissatisfied customers. I then noticed it's only 12 responses, which is quite a low sample, but I wonder whether there was any comment around why that might have been the case. Did anything happen that might have caused a drop off in performance there or satisfaction?
Thank you, William. If that's okay, I'll address that in the second part of the second paper, but note that question. Thank you.
I've got a couple of comments to make. Firstly, I would like to congratulate on the performance above targets which just achieved in most cases. I see the retirements, transfers, refunds were all on the areas of improvement. The deaths, the processing of death cases went down from 96% from 96.5. Apart from that, I think it's a very good performance.
Thank you, Chair.
I would like to ask a few questions as well. Why was the areas of active retirements and deaths, were there any issues with the quality there?
Thank you, Chair. So there remains quality issues with the service. So it's great that they are processing more cases on time, most cases on time. However, my team and myself do experience issues in terms of duplicate information being requested. We may have to chase them to ensure that they meet that SLA as opposed to them doing it themselves. There may be errors when we come to make a payment to a member whereby they haven't calculated some interest or made the payment date clear. So there's still quality issues, particularly in retirements and deaths. But you know, it's the main step is that they're processing most on time. They now need to focus on ensuring that quality piece is as high as the SLAs.
Thank you. Can I also refer you to page 35 and 36, which is the retirements for deferred and the active sections. The samples which have been taken, I think they're too narrow, aren't they? For instance, in the active retirements, there were 29 surveys issued, out of which 26 were non-responses, 2 were satisfied and 1 was dissatisfied. And on the deferred, similarly, you had 39 surveys issued, 32 non-responses, 5 satisfied and 2 dissatisfied. Is there any reason why the responses, which is about 82.1 and 89%, it's a very high figure? Is there any reason for that?
Thank you, Chair. But in line with William's question, if I could answer that in a second part, because the first paper is predominantly to do with the KPIs. Currently, the satisfaction scores are not part of the KPI, so I will address that issue, that question in the second paper, but thank you for that.
Thank you. Can I ask the pension fund, can I ask the Joint Committee members to ask the fund committee to note the contents of the report? Right. Item 6, again, I ask Eleanor to briefly introduce the item.
Thank you, Chair. So this second paper sets out a summary of activity in pension administration. So the key headlines being that complaints have fallen. There were only 1 at the end of Q3. Callers to the help desk on the whole are satisfied with the service that they receive. And the average wait time is slightly shorter at 2 minutes 3 compared to 2 minutes 7 seconds. However, the budget expenditure to date is 1% above the target due to additional expenditure and resources. So this is predominantly due to higher case numbers, them wanting to meet the KPIs and needing more staff and having to pay them overtime in order to meet those. So whilst the cost per member remains the same at £30.64, the budget to date is, as I said, 1% higher. So that's 414,719 versus 416,262. So that is just a grand and a half higher due for those reasons I've just outlined. I will touch on, based on William and yourself, Chair's question on the satisfaction scores. It is something that LPP are working on in terms of how to increase the number of responses. It is very difficult. Most people won't respond if they are marginally satisfied or neutral, or if they've met their expectations. Unless they've gone over and beyond or they're extremely dissatisfied, they're unlikely to respond to the surveys. We do have very small numbers of cases on the whole. So, in Q3, we only had 30 retirement cases processed. So that will influence the figures if in terms of those large differentials, because it only needs a small number to be dissatisfied for that to look overall higher level of dissatisfaction than it is. LPPA did mention in the admin only meeting last year that they were trying to entice members to respond via vouchers, Amazon vouchers, etc., and that they continue to work on that to increase the level of responses. Hopefully that answers both of your questions as to why there is that differential and how those figures can be represent a higher levels than they should do, simply because of the low numbers involved.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Right. Well, I've got two questions. Under paragraph 1, you're saying that the unsatisfactory service and the commitment to improve them are based around 3 initiatives. Firstly, the introduction of a client relationship manager. Secondly, a centralized mailbox. And thirdly, a training academy for their staff and client and employer forums. What progress has been made in respect of those 3 matters?
Thank you, Chair. So the client mailbox is a work in progress. There's quality issues there. They don't always respond. Sometimes, so my team will escalate a case to the mailbox, but have to go to a named individual in order for any action to be taken. In terms of the forum, it's only the second time that they've done that. So I think it's a bit early to understand the value of that. We only actually, for the employer forum, had one of our employers attend that. So there's some work to do there in terms of getting better representation from Hammersmith and Fulham fund employers. And in terms of the client relationship manager, they're switching that around. It has been working very successfully in the last 12 months, but they're changing that again. So that's something to monitor going forward. In my view, if it's not broken, don't fix it. So let's see what kind of response we get going forward with the new setup.
Thank you. And the other question was paragraph 6. LPP have improved information on their website on employer responsibilities and divorce. Just wondering, how did the divorce come into the picture?
Sorry, Chair, would you mind repeating the question?
Yes, paragraph 6, page 39. There's a reference to information on the website on employer responsibilities and divorce. I'm just wondering where the divorce comes in. If you look at paragraph 6 of the...
Thank you, Chair. So they periodically update the information on their website, and it just so happens that those areas were made clearer for individuals. So they just go through a cyclical exercise, and there's no change to legislation regarding pensions and divorce. It just so happens they are the areas that they've updated recently.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Can I ask the committee to note the contents of the report? No. Pension, item 7 is pension fund quarterly update for quarter 3, 2024. And I've got Sian Cogley to tell us more about that.
Thank you, Chair. Sian Cogley, Pension Fund Manager. Since the deadline for papers passed, there is an update to the information available in the pack. So performance has continued to be positive. In the quarter ended the 31st of December 2024, the market value of assets increased by 54 million to 1.428 billion. The total fund has outperformed its benchmark net of fees by 0.83%, delivering an absolute return of 2.95% over the quarter. And the total fund delivered a positive return of 9.86% over the year to the 31st of December 2024. Other items of note for the quarter are that at the meeting of the 26th of November 2024, the committee agreed to invest 35 million in the Quinbrook Renewable Impact Fund 2. The first drawdown for this investment was completed in January 2025. Initial planning has also started on the 2025 triennial valuation process, with cash flows and membership data for the 2022 to 23 and 2023 to 24 financial years uploaded to the actuary for data cleansing. And following interviews on the 21st of January 2025, the committee has appointed Sam Gervais-Jones as their new investment advisor. Some of the actions from the previous board were answered in the course of the November committee meeting, but to ensure that the board's requests are satisfactorily addressed within this forum, I'd like to address the previous 2 actions for myself here. First, regarding the training sessions query, the contact list of who was sent the latest Triborough training session, which took place on the 30th of September 2024, included the majority of current board members. The training session was attended by co-opted member Bruce McKay. Councillor Rory Vaughan, who is no longer on the pensions board, was on the contact list, and unfortunately Councillor Patel was not. This has now been updated and rectified with the team members who organised the training, and all board members are now on the distribution list for future training events. If there are any topics that the board themselves would appreciate further training on outside of these twice annual sessions, please do let us know and we'll facilitate that requirement. And secondly, regarding the valuation of the Aviva redemption, as you'll be aware, Aviva attended the 26th of November 2024 meeting. The Hammersmith and Fulham Pension Fund has received the final redemption money, the final distribution of income and rebate of the management fees that were previously applied from the 1st of January 2024. The matter is now treated as concluded as no further action can be taken. And I would now welcome any questions from the board on the quarterly performance update.
Are there any questions?
Thank you, Sean, for this and for your work on this. I was just wondering if you could tell us a bit more about the process and the goal of the hiring of, sorry, I can't remember the exact title, that was hired last week, not last week, on the 21st of January that you said in the interviews, exactly what the role entails and whether we should expect them to engage with the pensions board as well, for example.
Thank you, Councillor. The investment advisor was previously held by Marion George. So she sits on the committee and provides an independent voice to the view that us as officers and ISIO as the investment advisor to the fund's investments to provide that detailed expert knowledge and support any decisions that the committee are making and provide another point of view essentially.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Yes, Will.
I'm not sure this is the right time to ask this, so you'll guide me if it isn't. Maybe it's not a question for this forum, but I hear that Kensington and Chelsea have announced to their members that they're not going to be making contributions to the fund for the next year because they've got so much money there, I suppose. I think my question is, I hope we're not going to do the same thing, and can you give me confidence on that?
Thank you. Yes, that we are hoping that there is not questions to do the same thing in this forum. It's currently having it's very popular as a topic at the moment in the industry. The actuaries have just released their opinion, and there's a couple of articles in the LGC if anyone would like those circulated to read on the subject. The Hammersmith Fund, although it is fully funded, I think off the top of my head 145% in the December pack that would be coming, we would not be supporting an opinion of having a 0% employer contribution rate like Kensington and Chelsea.
Are there any other questions? That's all right. Do you want to ask any questions, Paul? No, right. I've got a few questions, I'm afraid. On Appendix 1, you recorded that the last September variance is due to receiving the Aviva redemption monies. I think we should actually note that I think the loss to the council was about 2.5 million.
Yes, there was a loss to the council on the redemption there. This variance that it's responding to is the variance in terms of our forecast, in terms of our cash flow forecasting. It's more about when we expected to receive the money back in this pack and that we weren't expecting to receive it when we did. But we do take your point that there was a loss on this redemption that was received.
And do you think that any lessons have been learned from the Aviva episode?
The committee in the Aviva episode acted as best they could with the information available, and it was a very beneficial decision from a very, at the time, new committee to withdraw on the basis of the a number of compounding factors, including asset choices, poor management of the fund, and poor client communication. These issues were addressed as soon as they were realised, but unfortunately, with these liquid assets, you can only get out of them on these longer term basis. We are working with our investment advisors, ISIO, to continue to review the portfolio and identify these items as and when they occur with other investments. But on the whole, we think the committee did everything and officers have done everything as best they can in resolve to the Aviva situation.
Can I just add that at the pension committee meeting, Daniel McHugh from Aviva, who attended, and one of the points he raised was that the actions were in alignment with the documentation which specified no targets, but rather an obligation to optimize returns where possible. So I think that's quite an important lesson to learn, that we should set targets, not simply say that they should increase in value. Do you agree with that?
I agree with your point in principle. Of course, these tend to come out of very large legal documents about which everyone has written their way through clauses to try and shift responsibility should this occur. But we will be highlighting these clauses in future investment decisions. And thank you for your input on the matter.
I also want to raise my concerns about one of the funds.
I assume it'll be Darwin Leisure.
Yeah, Darwin, exactly.
There
Now,
is a supplementary paper that will be released with the committee papers to address that, but it will be an exempt session. Sorry,
Fine.
but if you'd like to continue your question there.
well, I was just alarmed at the magnitude of the reduction in NAV and the reasons given behind that. I mean, I've seen the reasons stated in the background, issues such as COVID-19 pandemic leading to park shutdowns, higher levels of inflation and cost of living crisis. But I mean, there's no mention of the policy of staycation, which was alive and kicking during the pandemic. I would have thought that a project like this, where you have a holiday park owners, they would actually benefit from that policy. And the other interesting thing is they're now saying that the impact of Blenheim Palace business model will come to their rescue. Can you give us some more information about that?
I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to give any more information on that business model at this meeting, but we can provide that exempt appendix for you to be circulated when it circulates to the committee.
And the other fund, which I think we should look out for, is the ABR R&D long lease property. Again, that made a loss. I think the unexpired term of the lease on average is 26.2 years, which in my view is not really long enough. Those are really referred to as diminishing returns. Do you have any comments on that?
I would have to go away and look into that more from you, I'm afraid, before I would be comfortable to comment.
Just to ask, when is the next committee meeting?
It's on the 5th of March.
Okay, thank you.
Item 8, exclusion of, item 7, pension fund quarterly update. We've just done. The only other thing is can I just come back to one other point, which was the report which was prepared for the pension fund response?
The Fit for the Future consultation response?
Yes. Are you in a position to deal with any of those points arising?
That can be in public session, yes.
Okay. I mean, the idea of the pools was to reduce consultancy fees and reduce the amount of dependence on expensive fund manager advice. So how do you think that's going to work? I mean, it's pooling together. There's a strict deadline, I believe, of the 21st of March 2025, which is only 6 weeks away, which has been extended to March 26. So are we in a position to transfer funds into that?
We're working closely with the London CIV on this matter at the moment. The fund currently has 61%, I believe, of its assets pooled with the London CIV. We are on track to. There's been a conversation, for example, that it would be very expensive if we were to divest all of our liquid assets and then reinvest into them with the CIV. That's not what's going to happen. The ownership is going to be transferred to the CIV as a transference rather than a full divest and reinvest situation. So that will allow a quicker method of pooling. There is a couple of assets that I believe we'll have to have conversations between the committee and the CIV about the best way to deal with those. It would still currently look like quite an ambitious deadline to have everything pooled by the 31st of March 2026, but we are endeavouring to comply with the government's wishes on this.
sorry, are there any funds which cannot be transferred within the time limits, even if it's 31st of March 2026?
There'll be funds that are currently in runoff. So one of our partners group assets, we have extended the time in which they can return the redemptions to us as that fund runs off. But if it was to extend over the 2026, it would be so immaterial that it would not be worth transferring at the point of 31st of March 2026. But in theory, there should not be a reason of why we can't endeavour to still reach the 31st of March 2026 as a deadline. There may just be some operational hurdles to that in between, but we are working closely with the Civ to make sure we can do the best that we can in the matter.
Thank you. And final question is question 24. It's recorded that the LBHF fund agrees that it is essential for pension committee members to have the necessary knowledge and skills to make strategic investment decisions supported by training framework. Do we know what sort of framework is going to be introduced for that?
There hasn't been a prescribed framework as such. A lot of councils already have a policy in place that emphasises the need for training and skills of their committees. So there isn't necessarily a framework in mind for what that will take place as at the moment.
Just to add there, Chair, that there isn't a defined, so the government hasn't defined what that skill and training framework looks like. We already, as Sean will confirm, as we have a comprehensive training programme, but what we don't do is assess skills. And that's something that the government's looking to have as part of that in the pensions bill, which may or may not be in April 25, sorry.
And do we have any information about who's going to be on the administrative authorities or the pool company boards?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yeah, the government is going to form these administering authorities and pool company boards. Do you know what the membership of those bodies are going to be?
The administering authority will stay as the main council, the Hammersmith and Fulham Council. The pool that we are a member of is the London Collective Investment Vehicle, and that's not likely to change across this horizon.
Right. All right. I would like the committee to ask to report, to note the update in the report. Yeah. Do we have any exclusion of public and press? Any discussion of the contents?
I don't believe there's any exempt items that will require it.
There isn't any. Right, well, I think in that case, that's the end of the meeting. Do we know when the next meeting is? Fourth of June. Right. Thank you all for coming. We'll see you on the 4th of June.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Bye.